Griggs, and also known as Thomas Griggs. Growing up, we had an adversarial relationship until, or it was difficult. It was just sometimes, siblings don't flow, right? Or they do for a little while, but then it gets rough and crazy. And so I always felt uncomfortable with him. But later, he got involved with a men's group called Mankind Project. And many of you may be familiar with it. And I'm suggesting that he may do a future talk about this organization and his involvement with it, because it was then that I got my brother back. I got a brother that I could relate to and feel like I was part of him, he was part of me. I had a family member. And then later when I got married, my husband kept saying, I want a men's group. I want to talk to men. And so I put him in charge. I said, well, why don't you do my brother, Mankind Project with my brother? So he did. And he loved it. And I got a deeper relationship with my husband out of it. And it's just so profound. And so that's my brother. Willing to look at his stuff and make a difference. There you go. Tommy.
And I got my sister back too. Yeah, Whitney, you're interrupting my presentation. You're making me cry. Yeah, so welcome everybody. We're talking about psychological types, and one of the psychological functions is emotion. So we're right on point here. I want to just set the intention here to have us create this together and tie in what we know about the psychological types with the work, the last few sessions about emotional competence and the emotional compass, the way I've laid that out in a pretty specific way. And I'm sure you've heard a lot about psychological types in the past, and I expect this will be different unless you bring stuff up that you've already talked about and repeat yourselves. So, that's fine if it is. So I want to start with a little story. When I was younger, I used to teach tennis, and I used to teach my students, watch the ball. Watch the ball. And every day, all day long, watch the ball. Keep your eye on the ball. And one day, it never worked. They didn't do it. So the instruction was clearly faulty. And one day I read this book. It was a devotee of Guru Maharaji, I think, or something like that. And the book was The Inner Game of Tennis. I think that's what it was. And there was one little instruction in there. Was that what it was, Whitney? Yeah. Okay. And so I went out the next day, and instead of telling them to look at the ball or watch the ball, I said, look for the writing on the ball. And instantly they were hitting it in the sweet spot, all of them. I go, wow, that is amazing. This guru must know his stuff, And so I realized that there's an embedded principle here. And the way that's at play today is we can see things better if we're looking for distinctions and differences inside them. If we're looking for contrasts, if we are trying to make distinctions, then we grasp the overall purpose, event, person. This is true of humans. The value of distinctions is basically what I'm referring to. So in my mind, that's the context of talking about the types today. And so I want to talk about and have you talk about and play with how we move between them, because if we can distinguish them, then the next question is, how fluidly can we move between them? Because that was Jung's intention. you know that the types are thinking, feeling, intuition, and sensation. And you know the two attitudes that he talked about were extroversion and introversion. So he had 8 types, the 4 functions times 2 attitudes. And famously, he used the concept of extroversion and introversion and these types to analyze all of the philosophical and theological and psychological conflicts and debates of his age. And he typed all these combatants according to whether they were extroverted or introverted. So he was applying it. But in his clinical practice, the purpose of recognizing types was to guide the therapy of people. And so for him, the types were functions of the psyche, functions of consciousness. And he identified dominant, what he called dominant and inferior functions. They're also called differentiated and undifferentiated functions. And they're not the same for everybody. You know, I have my set of dominant and inferior, and you have your set of differentiated and undifferentiated. But the purpose of therapy or personal growth was to differentiate the undifferentiated ones. Now, he also said that the dominant ones were the ones that were in consciousness. Now, I should say this is not quite right, because he said that thinking and feeling, I believe, how did he do that? Oh, I'm not going to worry about it. No, that's not true. But what I said, I think, is correct, because the ones that are dominant are, he said, were in our conscious awareness, and the ones that were not dominant were in our unconscious. I think of it as out of awareness. And just as an aside, I think it's fascinating to imagine what it would be like to be hanging around in the 20s and 30s where these people were discovering that there was something going on outside of our awareness. You know, what is going on outside our awareness? Because up to now, all we've been doing is looking at what we're aware of. And these guys are going, and these women were going, you know, there's a whole nother world out here. We can inquire into it. So the purpose of therapy is to recognize that which I am not using. It's built into me. I'm not using it. But how do I bring it out? How do I develop it? And how do I balance myself is a major question. So that is to say, how do I balance my psychic functions? How do I balance thinking and feeling? And how do I balance intuition and sensation? And so the practice of psychotherapy, or in his case, psychoanalysis, was to, for example, take a Victorian engineer and work with him so that he could recognize he had feelings and bring feelings into consciousness and balance out his thinking. Or in those days, they used to talk about people who lived in the world of emotion primarily as having hysteria or being hysterical if it was turning into a problem. And so he's teaching thinking to people that live in the world of emotion. So you see where this goes. And if somebody's completely engrossed in sensation, then the work is to develop intuition, and vice versa, because the poles, they're thought to be mutually exclusive. And there's an interesting story about that, thinking and feeling being mutually exclusive. I believed that and experienced that up until I was 25 years old. So today we will use phrases like, oh, you're in your head all the time, or you're a hot mess. And that's kind of a colloquial way of saying that thinking is dominant for you, or emotion, feeling is dominant for you. And I think Jung was using feeling. It doesn't go back and forth across languages the same way. So we have feeling and emotion in English, and we can make distinctions about what those words mean. And he used a different word, like I think it was Gefühl. And what that, if you know German, correct me, but that basically meant feelings, but it was in the sense of emotions. It wasn't in the sense that we use feeling to mean judgments and interpretations and stuff. So there's a distinction, emotion and judgment. We'll get into that in a little bit, have you play with it. So where are we in the flow of things? How is Jung's purpose? Okay, so the question then is to you all today, or right now, what functions, which one of those four, and don't worry about extroversion and introversion, we're not going to fool with that today, and we're not going to mess with perception and judgment particularly. Which one of the thinking, feeling, intuition, and sensation are dominant for you? Which ones are you most familiar with? Do you know? Unmute yourselves and speak up and tell us what you know about which ones you have available and which ones tend to be unused or outside your awareness most of the time. Anybody?
And just know that if you speak during this time, that it will be recorded on YouTube. So just kind of a reminder.
Thank you for that. I appreciate it. Yeah, go ahead, Afton. Just speak up. Anybody?
Well, I'm INFP in the extreme, and I love typology. I've taken many intense classes in it. It's helped me immensely, especially looking at inferior functions from the perspective of they are inferior functions. That's okay, but nevertheless, I can be challenged to raise them up a bit to get a little better at my thinking, a little better at my judgment part, and even a little more extroverted. And also the sensate, even paying more attention to the external environment. So I love typology, and it's helped me immensely personally, and I use it with many of my clients, and they mostly love it too.
Okay, so you said INFP, which is introverted intuition, feeling, and perception, and the flip of that is ESTJ, which is okay, that's a complete flip. Thank you. Anybody else? Yeah, go ahead.
Holy smoke, I had already written down Myers Briggs. Holy,
right.
That's astounding. So have you done a lot of work with that as well, Thomas?
I know about it, and I would prefer not to use it, frankly.
Of course.
But I mean, it works for the people that use it, but go ahead. What are yours?
Give me the four categories again really quickly.
Just thinking, feeling, sensation, and intuition. We're just focusing on psychological functions here, not attitudes, which are extroversion, introversion.
When I'm not being so ADD sometimes, I think I work really well with intuition, and it seems to be pretty dependable.
Oh, okay. Cool. And Eugenia, yeah, go ahead. Unmute and tell us. You're still muted, sweetie. Oh, do you have permission to unmute? Well, yeah, you must, because other people are unmuting. What's the deal?
Everybody can unmute. I can mute, but I cannot unmute.
Yeah, okay.
I think I'm on now.
Yeah, you are. You're good.
I'm on. Yeah. So I've worked with the Myers Briggs quite a bit, and I was actually a trained facilitator, which was very intense. The training for me, what's been odd is I balance out. I mean, between thinking and feeling, and I think this has to do with as a woman, you are encouraged to go with how you feel, and I grew up.
You are.
Am I muted again?
No, you just said you, and that would be me. I mean, but you mean women or I? Right?
I mean, women as a whole, are encouraged. I mean, we know it's weighted. The world is weighted in women in the feeling zone, right?
Gotcha.
And I was that. I grew up feeling a lot, and my mother was very intuitive, and I learned that from her. And at the same time, I love the scientific stuff, not science, but math. And so for me, making decisions is a combination. The thinking often dominates the feeling for me, which so social problems in the world, I look at from a very factual kind of place rather than emotional. For example,
Okay.
I don't eat meat because of the impact on the environment. I know people who don't eat meat because of the impact on the animals. So I've felt, and I've just felt, when I've done the Myers Briggs, I just come out down the middle, except for the P. I'm 100% P. I'm always going to be late, and I'm always going to be slow.
All right, I want to talk about the balance issue, because that's very much what is going on here.
Yeah.
And I like the example of I don't eat meat, because one time I asked my friend why they don't eat meat, thinking they were going to give me some rational reasons. And the answer that came back was, I don't like how I feel, or I just don't like it. And there it was. So sometimes we miscommunicate because of that. So I'll tell you a quick story. When I was in college, I was in a class, my first class about Jung, and we were messing with the types, and we took the indicator, and I came out ENTJ, extroverted, intuitive, thinking, judgment, ENTJ. And that's like a field marshal, kind of bosses everybody around, and you do it my way and stuff like that. And very, very rational and out of touch with emotion. And I was pretty much out of touch with emotion, even though I'd experimented with LSD and it helped a lot. Then I moved to California on purpose in 1975. And I went there because I was already had a master's in psychotherapy and social change. And I wanted to immerse myself in all the encounter group human potential stuff that was out there. And that's why I made the remark about Esalen a few minutes ago. And so I got into body work and Reichian and Alexander and Feldenkrais and, massage workshops and all this other stuff. And it also did a lot of emotional work of recognizing and doing cathartic work. And so I immersed myself in that. So then I moved back to North Carolina. 15 years later, I gave the type indicator to my staff and myself, and I came out flipped almost completely. I came out INFP, which was, except for intuition, was the opposite. But here's a little bit of 2 points. One is that my scores were much more balanced. The functions were much more even. They weren't extreme. Like I wasn't way out on the thinking side the way I was originally. So I had created the balance that I was looking for. I had access. Now, the question again is, first, can I make the distinctions about where I am? And that's what I'm asking you today. Can you make the distinctions about which part you're using at the moment? And the second question is, how fluid are you moving back and forth between them? So when I was out in California, I was 26. I was in this intensive month-long psychotherapy training up on Mount Madonna down in Watsonville, south of San Francisco and San Jose. And I remember distinctly being in the hot tub and talking to folks, and I had just discovered that I could think about my feelings. And it absolutely blew me away, because up until that day, I had had the experience that I could either think or feel, and that if I was feeling, I couldn't think. So I was kind of dangerous. I couldn't moderate myself or control myself or be rational at the same time I was being emotional. And so even though Jung, I think, got it right about their opposing functions, and if you're doing one, you're not in the other. That's the way we're built. Fluidity then becomes an issue, because the quicker I can move back and forth between thinking and feeling, it's as if they coexist. So if we get really quick and facile about going to all the functions, then at that point, the type indicator is not so relevant. And that's what I meant about I don't use the Myers Briggs. Because for me, the problem with it is a lot of people get their type and they think that they're fixed in that type. And that's what they talk about for the rest of their lives. And they want to refer to, I am an INFP. But what I think we want to be is an I am all of them. And I have access to all of them. So that's kind of the punchline here. And let's play with that a little bit. I also, at that same workshop out on Mount Madonna, where I was discovering I could both think and feel very quickly in proximity, so it seemed like I was doing it at the same time. There was a guy out there, a psychiatrist named Paul Ware from, I think he's from Shreveport, and he got time to come on stage, as it were, and talk about some of his specialty work. And his specialty was working with Miss Americas, plural, and Miss Louisiana's, plural. He was famous for it, to teach them how to think, because they were these kind of Barbie doll creatures that were absolutely at risk. They were to be preyed upon by manipulative men who could manipulate their thinking, because they weren't aware of thinking, they're only aware of feeling, so they could manipulate their feeling. So he taught them how to think, and he had a very specific process, and I thought that was fascinating. And it reminds me of Jung, working with people to teach them the opposite function. He was very, very good at it. And he said to me, "You need to go get a PhD." And I had so much respect for him, I went and got one. I thought that's kind of fun. So now, if we're going to recognize these psychological functions and move between them with facility, then we need to be aware at every given moment where we are. Awareness is the key to this little adventure. But that's why we practice mindfulness, because we're not in mindfulness, we're not in the here and now all the time naturally. So we need to practice doing it. And it's not that easy. It's easy to say, but it's difficult to do, because our minds naturally wander out of here and out of now. So I want to read you two little quotes, and then I'm going to need 3 volunteers to demonstrate and play with this idea, this awareness. It's called an awareness continuum. So the first one is from Suzanne Giesemann. Some of you know her. She channels an entity known as Sanyaya, I think. So here, before there was you, there was what? This. This what, you ask? Look for it now. Pause a moment and notice what comes to mind when you pause to consider what was here before you. Do not pause so long that thoughts and visions arise. Pause only long enough to be aware of being aware. There, here, you have found it, your true nature, awareness. The state of purity did not disappear when you were born. It is the essence beneath the story that has grown with every experience. Awareness. It is full and empty at the same time. The source of all adventures. Find this and know peace, for it never changes, is always present, and has no story with its drama. This is your salvation. You are so very loved. I'm channeling Jonathan, doing the Tao readings. Okay, now that's deep and beautiful and powerful, right? So here's another one. This is from Mason Williams, out of his book called Reading Matter. It's a dialogue between a boy and a girl. The boy says, "What's he got that I ain't got?" The girl says, "Awareness." The boy says, "What's that?" End of readings. Now, awareness continuum. Can I get a couple of volunteers? Here's what it looks like. Just for 1 minute, and we've still got time to do this. 1 minute, you will say, "I am aware of," or "I'm aware that," and just do that for a minute. And we will all respectfully listen to you doing an awareness continuum of seeing what it's like to be in the here and now for a minute. And you may not be in the here and now for a minute. You may go off to somewhere else or whatever, but let's see what happens. Would anybody like to practice and play? Go ahead, Bonnie. I saw your hand first. you're up. I'll set a timer. Give me a second. Oh, we'll do a stopwatch instead, I think. Okay, you ready?
Okay.
Any questions? You
Just
have it?
saying, I guess I
You're-
just say everything that I'm
It's
aware of.
yeah,
then?
but keep saying I am aware of, I'm aware of that. Just keep saying I'm aware of something. I'm aware, I'm aware, I'm aware. Okay? Ready? Go.
Okay. I'm aware that I am overthinking. I am aware that I am analyzing.
Which one is analyze?
Shh, Joel, don't say
It's
it.
good to analyze. If you didn't analyze, you wouldn't function.
Should have done you do that. Okay. Sorry.
Go ahead, let's see.
Okay. Okay. I'm aware I'm overthinking. I'm aware I'm laughing. I'm aware I am entering new ground. I am aware that there are many possibilities that I have overlooked. I am aware that believing in myself is good, makes sense, is it's really natural. I'm aware that the worries and fears and in my mind are not as good as the reality.
Okay, I'm going to call time there.
Okay.
Thank you very much. We're not going to comment on that or debrief it. I want to hear from another person. Who else is interested in stepping up and doing a minute's worth of awareness? Because I'm going to ask you all questions about what you just heard, so be listening. Who's up? Tom?
I'm aware that I'm sitting in a spiritual group and listening to your voice. I'm aware that my mind likes to race a lot. I'm aware that this is a great exercise. I'm aware that I've got a pretty full day, but this is a great time to be with people. I'm aware that just settling in and listening and not having to be prepared to talk all the time is good. I'm aware that I'm hitting a little bit of a pause in what I'm aware of right now. I'm aware that there's so much yet to learn in what's next. I'm aware that I'm very blessed to be in just astounding health for my age, Hollywood secret. I'm aware that this is such an interesting experience. I've never done it before. And I'm aware that I feel a lot of positive energy in this group.
Okay, that's time. All right, good job, thank you. So Bonnie and Tom, I'm going to ask you, what came up or what was it like for you? And Tom, you just reported some of that, but who's one more for a minute? Who's up? Okay, Diana, go for it.
I'm aware of the sun coming through the window that feels so delicious. I'm aware of being in an esteemed companionship group. I'm aware of my little kitten that is snoozing here and makes me feel peaceful. I'm aware that I'm frightened about being alone this week and what's in front of me. I'm aware of vulnerability. And also I'm aware of hope and trust that answers will come, that I have knowing that always leads me. I'm aware of neediness that comes from thinking.
Okay, thank you. That's a minute. Appreciate it. Okay, folks, this is a conversation about psychological functions. Thinking, intuition, sensation, and feeling. if you can recall what you just heard, what of those functions did you just hear people being in? It's aware of is the same as energizing the function and being in the function. So what did you hear? Anybody? Okay, Mary Elson, go ahead. Just unmute yourselves. Everybody's muted, so you're gonna have to unmute in order to participate here.
I heard a lot of thoughts and a lot of feelings.
Okay, thank you. Who else? Keep going. Whitney?
I heard combinations of both, that the kitten thing and feeling, it sounded like two things going on at the same time.
Yeah, it could have been sensation.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
Could have been, and Afton, you're thinking that. Okay,
Yeah.
Levita, and that was the first time I think I heard a sensation.
Yeah, mostly it was intuition.
Actually, most of it was thinking.
Most,
I think if we went back and looked at the transcript, that would be my bet.
Yes.
Okay. But that's the distinction we're after. So that's the conversation we want to have is, which is which? That's absolutely what we're up to. Levita, what did you hear?
I call it changing gears. I heard gear changing mentally. I'm aware of it happening with comics a lot when they're
Well,
standing.
I'm asking a different question here, Levita. What functions did you just hear? What thinking did you hear in there? What feeling did you hear in them? Because yes, they were changing. What were they changing from and to is what we're after right now.
I think they went from what was around them in the environment, like the kitten, to what was in their inner world.
Okay, that still doesn't quite get at it, because I could do the outer world and the inner world from a place of feeling, and I can do the outer world and the inner world from a place of thinking. And I can do, and this is really important, I can do intuition from outer and inner. Outer intuition is, what am I picking up from you? And inner intuition is, what am I getting as guidance from my angels? Okay, so you're getting adjacent to these distinctions, and I guess it's going to take a little bit of practice if we want to play with it. But so let's keep going. Let's keep going. So for those of you that did it, were you aware at all of whether you were in feeling or in thinking or in intuition or in sensation? Diane, I thought you might be. Okay.
I was, yeah. Thank you.
Were you looking to go to the different functions to explore them?
No, I
It was
just
just natural.
I just tried to let the thoughts come naturally. So
Okay.
I wasn't manipulating it at all. Yeah.
All right. You hear the predicate? I was letting the thoughts come. She didn't say I was letting the feelings come just now. However, when she did her continuum, she mentioned feelings she had very obviously.
Don't you have to translate everything into a thought before you can speak it?
No, not at all. That's kind of the point here.
Good. Thank you.
I mean, some people express feelings without thinking.
Mm-hmm.
You know? Okay, are we having fun yet?
Oh, yeah.
All right. Okay, let's keep going. So Tom and Bonnie, do you want to say anything that came up for you that you are aware of from having done that?
Well, now that you mentioned it, Thomas, I don't know that I even, I'm not hearing the comments. I think I got into some feeling, but I wasn't aware of any categories while I was doing it.
Yeah, I know I didn't ask you to be aware of categories on purpose. I just wanted to see what you naturally did. And I'll bet you had emotions. And most of what I heard from you were thinking predicates. Most of it was expressed as thought. At least that's the way I heard. And again, I don't need to be right about it. I need us to, have a chance to have a conversation. And that's the way we'd make the distinctions.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Okay. So fluidity.
Oh, I was just going to say that, of course, I was thinking, which is my usual modus operandi. And then, of course, I'm just laughing. And Joe broke in. But anyway.
Okay.
But I'll just say, as I heard others spoke, it really, I went, oh, you know, I really, I don't know to say identified, but it just, yeah, kind of opened my mind to other areas.
Right. I thought of all three, you were the most distinct and pronounced about thinking and identifying your thoughts. You led off, I think, very purely and clearly with that. And then when you cracked up laughing, you didn't report how you felt, but you obviously are in it. And the other thing that I love that Bonnie's saying here is that she's becoming aware that there are other places we can go and that she can go. You know, I can think a lot, or I could have spent a minute being aware of emotions. Wow, what would that look like? What would that sound like? What would that feel like? To do nothing but I'm aware I'm feeling scared, where I'm feeling anxious, where I'm feeling sad. And then I switch over to sensation. I'm aware of my butt in the chair. I'm aware of chills down my neck, my shoulders, and my torso. And switching to thinking, I know that that's where I get my intuitive signals, is that part of my body. Back to feeling. I'm excited. This is fun. Back to emotion. I'm enjoying this. You see? So that's what we mean by fluidity. And Whitney introduced me as participating in the Mankind Project. Every single time I sat in circle for 25 years with this group of men, we would always do a round and practice identifying what emotions we had, and not talk about them, but identify what they were and where they were in our bodies. So we were practicing emotion and sensation, feeling and sensation, every time we met. Later in another round, if we wanted to, we could talk about our stories and our judgments about our emotions or about our sensations. But we were very distinct. And that's part of what Doug loved about it. Doug Raleigh, Whitney's husband, he's a scientist, a very heartfelt scientist, a great guy. And so that was like joy for him to be both precise and rigorous and emotional at the same time. He was just like a pig in slop doing that. That was fun, and I loved him for it. Okay, now here's the thing. Does anybody notice that thinking is much more available in general? I see you, Lisa. I'll finish my sentence and I'll come to you. Notice that thinking is available very quickly. And that's no accident, because we live in a culture where if you go to get educated, you are dealing with thinking. Authentic emotion, there's no preparation to deal with that in our educational settings 99% of the time. And I'm including clinical psychology programs that are purporting to teach people how to do psychotherapy. Even then, if you're in the classroom and you reveal a true feeling, like how deeply sad or grieving or scared or sexy you feel, you cannot bring that out because the container is not set up for it. So it's about thinking. So, but now at the other end, we can get some sensation, Love's Body and the Wisdom of the Body, and some of the great books that called us in that direction. But where's intuition? Why isn't intuition kind of right up top and out front? Lisa, what did you want to say?
So I really appreciate this sentence, I am aware of. It really, I'm gonna sit down and use this periodically today to find out. It really brings me into the now of myself. And yes, I'm thinking, feeling, all of this stuff, but I don't realize in the course of the day that I don't do that. I don't sit down and really look internally. I'm so busy doing all day long. And I just love this practice of just sitting down and saying to myself, I am aware of, and checking into my inner world, more or less, instead of being focused on my outer world. So thank you for bringing this to us today. I really appreciate this. I'm going to practice this week and I'll get back to you guys next week and let you know how I did.
Great. That'd be great. I want to say one other thing. Coming into the here and now means being in the present. The opposite of the here and now is the there and the then. So if you picture a grid, in my mind, I may project myself into the future, or I may project myself into the past, and I may be thinking about the future or the past, or I'll be thinking about the moment I'm in right now. So thinking takes us out of the here and now very quickly. That's why most meditations have you stop thinking. And sensing, being in the sensation mode, is much more likely to bring us back into the present. So is feeling. Intuition may get us out there. Tom was referring in his thinking, his awareness, he was thinking about the future of his day. I don't know if you heard that, but he made a reference to what was going to happen coming up in the day. So just for a moment there, he was like on the border of either being here and now thinking, or being then and there in a picture in his mind about what the future held, you see? So it does take a heck of a lot of practice to get in here. Diana, you want to say something? Or you just, okay, I can't see what you're doing with your hand. All right, so there was some other stuff, but I'm looking at the clock and I think I make one other point, and I see your chat, Whitney. And Mary Grace, did you want to say something?
Just that timing wise, you just have a couple more minutes.
Yeah, okay. I'm looking at the clock. I'm learning as we go. So notice that I am being rigorous about making the distinctions that I talked about at the very beginning. The power of any of this inquiry depends on the rigor with which we make the distinctions. Whether I'm vague about the here and now, whether I'm vague about whether I'm thinking or feeling or intuiting. So if I want to develop any one of those functions, I get to slow down, focus in the here and now, and dwell on one of the functions at a time, staying in the here and now, in order to develop it. So if you want to get in touch with your spirit guides and so on, and like me, you think of intuition as being their voice, then this is part of the technology of developing intuition. That's why we meditate, empty our mind of thought in order to be able to receive wisdom greater than our own. That's why we do that. Okay, so two other distinctions. One is in communication, we can distinguish between data, emotion, judgment, and requests for action. We've not talked about that, but we use that in the Mankind Project. We use that as our structure for communicating, so we don't mix up our judgments and the stories in our heads with what we feel and what we're thinking and what we're asking for. We practice over and over and over making those distinctions. And I'll leave it at that. Whitney, you said you're confused. You want to give a one-sentence question and one-sentence answer, and then I'll turn it back to the.
No, I'm swimming. I'm just swimming in all of it.
Is this a mini fire hose?
So.
Okay. All right. Well, I hope you can have fun with this, playing with it, everybody. And thank you for the time. I had fun. All right.
That was absolutely wonderful.